moving on to our next presentation for today, we have a very important and a very strong and a very supportive leader with us. Colonel Dr. M. Dayananda. Sir is a director of JSS Hospital. He is professor and head, Department of Hospital Administration at JSS Medical College. He is also Dean, Department of Health System. Colonel Dr. M. Dayananda is a director of JSS Hospital. He is professor and head, Department of Hospital Administration at JSS Medical College. Dean, Department of Health System Management Studies, JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research. Sir has plenty of credentials in his name. He has acquired his degree in hospital administration from prestigious All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. He has served at various capacities at military hospitals across the country. Served as professor and head, Department of Hospital Administration in prestigious Armed Forces Medical College, AFMC, Pune. Head of the Department of Medical Informatics at AFMC, Pune. Being head of the Department of Medical Informatics, Sir was instrumental in developing management information system, procurement of IT, hardware, software for the colleagues, and upgradation of the department. He was medical superintendent of KMC Manipal, chief operating officer of all teaching hospitals of Manipal University and Sikkim Manipal University. He has been administrator of Sagar Hospitals and Yashomati Hospitals in Bangalore. Sir's area of interest are hospital planning and consultancy, human resource management and manpower planning, and special interest in hospital automation and health information system. Sir has shown exemplary leadership amidst the pandemic of COVID-19 in handling a huge 1,800 bedded hospital at JSS Medical College Hospital at Mysore. And Sir has been a leader in getting lot of credentials, lot of laurels to the JSS Hospital. It may be NABH or NABL to the laboratory system of JSS Hospital. And Sir is a man of very few words and person of great action. It is a great pleasure having you with all of us, sir. Sir is going to give a talk on education and work life in 2021 and beyond. Welcome to you, sir, and I will hand over the session to you. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon to all of you. Firstly, I thank the organizers that they have invited me for this leadership series. The very fact that the leadership series have been conducted online compared to the last year or the before last year suggests that how we have moved. And first thing that I would like to make this thing is that Dr. Arun has made this thing easier because my topic also revolves around education as well as, of course, work life a little later. So it's wonderful he participated in this and gave us some kind of a structure and this thing to the education part. So as you can see, this is the one in a lifetime, or not even in a lifetime, one in 3 lifetimes. Last pandemic was there in 1921, 18 to 21 or so. So now we are having exactly after 100 years. That was the Spanish flu and this is the Chinese flu. So we are confronted with this, and most of the countries around the world are confronted with this situation. Some of the countries initially tackled the issue very well, and later on they fell into the second wave and third wave. And it is all a learning experience for each and every one of the countries. There is no one best country that handled well or one best country that did not handle well. It is not even there. It is just a learning process that we had, and we continue to learn because it is expected that there will be a third wave too, or the fourth wave. And also, it is also predicted that by 2026, there will be one more series of this kind of epidemic is there. Some kind of a crystal gauging happens and people suggest that. So within all these things, how do we keep our sanity and keep moving ahead and keep planning and adjusting to the uncertainties of life and work and things like that? So that is what is the challenge. As our Pro-Chancellor was telling, all these kind of informations and discussions will help the leader to formulate their own thoughts and how to move ahead, what needs to be done immediately, what needs to be done in the medium term and later will all be possible when you have some kind of an information or insight into all these subjects that we are discussing. That too, basically, I'm talking about is the education as well as the work life. So that is what I'm talking about. So it's wonderful that I got an opportunity. I'm going to speak on this very briefly. And as you understood, there is a lot of change that has happened all over the world in terms of how we live, how we learn, and how we work is all changed now. It is not the same. And it is not going to be back in the similar way, expecting maybe year or two down the line that we expect same thing will fall back. It doesn't. It has changed forever. So what we need to be doing is how we quickly and seamlessly adjust ourselves and move on and do better things is what is the challenge or the discussion is all about. And all the outdated concepts will be discarded as they no longer will become relevant. And we need, as you can see, it is a rapidly changing world. So with this context, I'll first focus on the education part. Then I will be speaking on I'll first focus on the education part, then I'll speak about the work part later. So firstly, that as you can see, due to the pandemic, you have the worldwide closure of universities, campuses, cancellation of person classes, and rapid shift to the virtual education to ensure staff as well as student safety. This happened all over the world in different measures, in different levels it happened. It is not that totally everything was come to a standstill. It is not true. However, most of the people suffered because of this condition, and we did not know how to figure out and what to be done first, what to be done second was not known. So many of the students were not even able to go back to their home country, and they left to stay abroad and attend to virtual classes. All this happened in various countries, and probably in our country too. If I remember, in the beginning of the first wave, we had about 80 or 90 students, Chinese students who came for RT-PCR testing. I said, where are you going? I said, we are going back. Where are you going back? I said, we are going to Wuhan. So they were given 2 tests, first test today and one more test after 48 hours. With those 2 tests, they went to Bangalore International Airport to be flown to Wuhan. So that is how life changed to all the students. And despite being a year of global upheaval, this 2020 has brought in a lot of major developments in digital solutions and education, such as widespread switch into online schooling, the rise and use of apps and hybrid learning, which Dr. Arun also made a mention of. However, to have an in-house and in this thing that Pro-Chancellor, maybe about year and a half back only, we were thinking of how to have this online classes, how to make it more effective, was thought of by him. So we were probably the first responders to this kind of a situation. So this needs to move, strengthen further so that we will have a better result in terms of education. And it is likely that this kind of this thing will continue with this digital technology for our foreseeable future. There probably a less chance of going back, or it will be a hybrid situation, worst come to worst. So first, let us see the positive impact of education system because of this COVID pandemic. Next, please. You see that with this coming in of this thing, immediately that happened was developing of the soft copy of learning material. You will see the students which hitherto had the textbooks and the written notes and things like that, that changed quickly. Everyone went into the soft copy mode. People started adopting, they were using, and it was widely distributed, shared amongst the students. This happened the first thing when we had this COVID pandemic and lockdowns happened. Then second thing, important thing that happened was the improvement in the collaborative work. Whereas we were all individually working and studying in the classrooms and having our own understanding and coming back, getting into various evaluation modes and things like that. Now that is not so. Now what is happening is there is huge amount of collaborative work going on. People get together, discuss, understand, and it will be more of a collaborative work henceforth than an individual study. And as you can see, the rise in online meetings in different modes, either it is conferencing, webinar, you take whatever is the different modes of this thing that we have. But definitely there is a huge amount of rise in online meetings and discussions, and that is also proving to be as productive as before. Then third is about the enhanced digital literacy. perforce we are forced to understand and learn digital literacy to get ahead, to understand, because there is, without that you will not be in the mainstream at all. So that is again, it is the COVID pandemic has forced us to get into become digitally literate. The next is the improved use of electronic media. Everyone has started understanding and using electronic media, sharing communication. It, of course, it has become, it has gone to the other extent, to the extreme. However, this is happening. Then the worldwide exposure is also happening. People are looking outside and what other countries are doing. There is a quick exchange of this thing. So within a day or two, we get to know that there is a second or a third or a fourth COVID variant. It's South Africa variant, as an India variant, or some other Singapore variant, and things like that. Very quickly, we get to know what is happening, and very quickly solutions are also found. And with all this, there is a huge amount of better time management is there. It is unlike before we had physical movements and physical this thing, which is not there. So now the focus is on better time management too. So that is also a very positive impact because of this COVID happening. And demand for open and distance learning is gone a big way. And this is also very welcome, this thing that because of this, even our university has opened up, we have a distance learning program in our management studies also. This is very encouragingly taken up by some of the African countries. So this is also happening in a big way. However, yes, next please. However, there is also a negative impact on education system. So number one is that educational activity in the real terms, like it used to be before, it is hampered to an extent. It is not as comfortable as it seems. There is hesitancy, there is not full understanding. Not everyone is in the same level of understanding, either use of technology or understanding or the focus, things like that. It is not happening. So there is a bit of activity is hampered. Unpreparedness of teachers and students. It was a shock. Suddenly we used to move from the physical environment to the digital environment. It is not easy for everyone. Of course, younger lot and few people did adopt so quickly, but however, there were many who were not prepared. They didn't, either the teachers or the students, both from both the sides. There was a little bit of a understanding gap was there. So it took some time, and it took some effort also from people. That, like you can see that Government of India guidelines come to us from Ministry of Health. Nowadays, it is so fast. Every third or fourth day, COVID-19 guidelines, how to treat, revised guidelines come. So this fast and information is also happening, but that is not assimilated. It comes all right. We get in terms of guidelines, but it cannot be assimilated so fast. We are not designed like today you say that so-and-so steroid or a remdesivir is effective. Tomorrow you say it is not effective. So it becomes difficult. Adopting is not easy. Third is about the parents' role and their level of understanding, their knowledge. It is not everyone is up to this thing. They are unable to guide or counsel their wards in terms of how to adopt to this. And it may be I'm talking about a school level maybe. So this is also a challenge. And this also, it is not complete. Many parents do not know how to guide their children to get into this. Then with a lot of gadgets coming in, which to use, what to use, and understanding is a very, very difficult thing, and it takes time for them to adopt to these gadgets. And lastly, there is a digital divide. Unlike very developed countries like USA or Australia or some other countries, here we have a huge gap. There is a large number of people who are not access to internet, not access to any devices, or a mobile phone or a laptop, smartphone, things like that. There is a digital divide existing, and there is a huge amount of talk amongst the educationists as well as social scientists, how you're going to bridge this gap of this unequal distribution of education in terms of digital divide. It's a challenge. This also needs to be done, especially in our country. So with all this comes probably the only great this thing that we have, tool we have, is the technology. Technology is going to lead training and education by, in fact, Dr. Arun was also emphasizing in a big way on that and giving example of Byju's and other online teaching platforms. This is really this thing that has come to our help. So which is going to drive for the next 1 or 2 decades. So now I'm just quoting this. This is a reference from the Pearson International Schools. The Pearson International Schools is a consulting agency. They run international schools all over the world. And there are certain amount of predictions and certain amount of this thing that they have said. I'm just quoting so that it's easy for us to understand where the world is moving in terms of education. And they say the first is that artificial intelligence and automation will play a greater role in how team members learn new skills and technologies. This is one important thing that they say. In the next 10 years, up to 2029, what we are seeing is that this is going to be a driver in terms of making the education more accessible and helpful, where you'll find the this thing of the artificial intelligence as well as automation. Second point they said is a very good point, in fact, is about nano learning. Nano learning, it means what is happening today is that there is a decline in attention span. The children as well as students as well as even adults, there is a decline in the attention span. What used to be maybe 20 minutes has reduced to maybe 3 to 5 minutes now. And that is because of the screen fatigue. Everything that is happening with us is through the screen now, almost. I'm talking about education. So there is a bit of people are unable to concentrate on these things. So what is happening today is that the attention span is gone and there is a screen fatigue. So what needs to be done? So what needs to be done is, as per the Pearson International, what they're proposing is that bit-sized learning solutions. Bit-sized learning solutions means about whatever you want to convey should be conveyed within 2 to 5 minutes. That's what they're saying. So here, how do we go about doing this nano learning? They say you have to identify the students' needs first, as we do in all the cases. Set the learning objectives. What needs to be learned, end of the lesson or end of the exercise. Then choose the content, whether it is video is suitable, apps is suitable, podcast is suitable, what is suitable, take up that and keep it short. So that is 2 to 5 minutes is the maximum attention span. So you have to deliver one bit of information in 2 to 5 minutes. You cannot have a longer 45 minutes to a 1 hour to a discussion. That will not hold good because the attention span is very, very short. Then second is about the virtual reality and augmented reality. This is also coming up in a big way. In fact, the airlines industries and even the army, a lot of simulations have come in. Like if I give you an example of the Airbus training certificates, what they do is that there is a simulator. They simulate the airfields of all over the world. All the airports in the world, they simulate. And different weather conditions, they simulate. And the pilot is supposed to maneuver and land and take off and things like that. So that is already coming up. The huge, in a big way, it is coming. And in military parlance also, various use of the missiles and things like that, it has already gone into this virtual augmented reality type of learning. It is not, the live shells or live missiles are not used anymore. So this is also happening. So that also would come into our field, in the education field also, in terms of virtual reality and augmented reality. One example I can give you is about the virtual reality headset is available. In that, what is known as immersive virtual reality training is given. Suppose, I can give some other example, like suppose I would like to visit Maldives. So where that VR glasses, VR headset, and you will be having the touch and feel experience. You'll be on a beach side, you'll be doing everything, you are visualizing as well as you are participating. That is already coming. That is also going to come in education in a big way, virtual reality. And a very moderate or a very cheap or a moderate price one is called as a Google Cardboard. With that, you put insert the mobile set into that with an Android application. We'll have a similar experience, not to the extent that is possible in virtual reality, where you can learn and teach a lot of things and take it to sites. Suppose I'm doing a geography class, I can go to a particular area, Antarctica or anywhere through that. And that is the power of technology today. Even as Dr. Arun was also mentioning, many of the learning mode will move towards project-based learning. Real life projects are given and the teachers become facilitators. They will allow the students to work through it and find a solution, or not even if it is solution is not found, that how to go about searching for this. And this is a learning experience through projects. Then experiential learning is again, a person is put into the situation that they are in, and the experiences they learn, whether right or so, right or wrong or so, will also be a part of kind of experiential learning that is going to be coming in a big way. Of course, online schooling is going on. That is, I think most of the schools have adopted, good schools have adopted online schooling, and this is going to continue. Maximum would be, there will be a very short exposure in the schools, physical exposure in the schools. The rest of the things will be online. So we can look at certain pros and cons in terms of the online education. Number one, most important is the convenience. Wherever they are, at home, wherever they are, the classes can be held, and teacher wherever they are, whether in the university, whether at home, wherever. Convenience is the most important thing that we see in online education system. And it is really less expensive compared to the physical structure and classroom, physical classes, holding physical classes and things like that. It will be certainly be very less expensive in terms of having online classes. And technology has come in big way. It can be made as effective as a classroom learning. And of course, it brings in all additional benefits, not even logistics and things like that can be considered. Certain things to be considered in terms of the constraints is limited social interaction would be there. However much the screen time or screen discussion take place, the human being is a social animal. Ultimately, you need to have some socialization. That kind of this thing, there will be a limitation there. Whatever cost we can claim, but technology will add some cost, and scheduling cost and things like that will also be there in terms of having scheduled classes for a particular time here to schedule it, to get an internet access, things like that will also be there. Effectiveness of assessments. There are many assessment modes have come after we are unable to hold the physical examinations in classrooms. So, but how far they are effective, how good are they? It is yet to be proved. There are many assessment tools are available, and I do not know how much they have proved, they are validated, and the same amount of this thing that goes with a school physical assessment and this thing, I do not know. But this is also a constraint, I feel. And it is also problematic to the instructors, however trained an instructor may be, how exactly he delivers, and all teachers cannot be at a particular level. So this is also at stake in terms of some people would be very effective instructors and some people would be not so very effective. This is also a constraint when we are having these online classes. Next, please.
Medical education.
So I'm I'm focusing a little bit on the medical education part. This lockdown has imposed a lot of curb on the transmission, because to stop the transmission of COVID, this has brought in medical education to a standstill. I'm talking about physical visit to the clinics and things like that. It's become really difficult. Though we try to do something and having few students and having one patient and things like that, we are doing all that experiment, all right. But the real this thing of a learning in a medical college is really the patients and the interaction with the patients, and this thing that is lost during this COVID pandemic. And medical institutes in India globally were affected by COVID epidemic, and not only India, all over the world. An immediate need to adopt modules of delivery on e-learning platforms need to be divided, need to be invented and put to use. This is very important. And this is already being done in our college in various, I can see a lot of classes being held out by our instructors, and a lot of people have become experts in having these e-learning platforms. The medical educators and students are struggling to overcome teaching challenges. In spite of all this, there is a difficulty. We have not come to a situation of ease. So maybe time will be the better this thing, so that in a year or so, we will be able to be so comfortable as before. Despite limited preparedness, medical education should continue to provide updated information to the healthcare workers deployed in fighting COVID-19 epidemic, which we are doing. Each time we get a guideline from the government of India, our faculty members, they have live sessions with the senior, the residents and senior residents and the clinicians, and how the treatment has been revised and what needs to be done. We are in continuous contact and discussion with this. So this is helping us to tide over the latency. So in conclusion, the online education especially can be very highly effective alternative method of education for students who are mature, self-disciplined and motivated and well organized and have a high degree of management, time management skills. However, it may be an inappropriate learning environment for more dependent learners and have difficulty assuming responsibilities required by the online courses. So this would be a kind of a certain number of students will fall into this area. So at the conclusion, I would like to say, instead of learning to memorize facts and figures, students need to learn how to learn and how to solve problems. That is the crux of the online education should be. So with that, I finished my very short on education. Though I'm not an expert in education, but however, I tried to research and see where I can bring up the facts and put it forth before you. So the next issue I'm going to address is about work life in 2021 and beyond. Before that, I would like to highlight, this is the employment growth forecast. This is done for the United States Ministry of Labor by Milken's Institute. They have said that in the next 10 years, that is 2019 to 29, what is going to happen to various sectors and which are pandemic resilient sectors, which are not. You can see at the top green dot, education and healthcare services are growing more than 80% even during the pandemic. That means they are the most resilient sectors to be noted is education and healthcare services at the top. Then the professional business services, leisure hospitality, construction, and other things come, which are not going to grow, which are going to contract, which there will be a lot of unemployment, would be retail trade, wholesale trade, manufacturing, and utilities. This is the prediction of the Milken Institute of Staff Calculation, what is going to happen. Also, there is an interesting finding in America in the 2019-20, almost in their labor, they do a weekly survey of the employment, unemployment status. They saw that almost 116,000 women dropped out of the workforce. And also it was interesting to see almost 16 to 18,000 more men joined the workforce. There's just an interesting piece of information for you. Because of the pandemic, there is a large number of female workforce, probably in our country too, going and assuming some other role because they are both providers or homemakers as well as workforce. So this is happening. And second, this thing that I would like to highlight to you is that the World Economic Forum survey findings. According to them, COVID-19 has prompted about 30% of employed adults to take leave of absence, according to New World Economic Forum Ipsos survey. That is 30% of the employed adults dropped off from the employment scene. In our country, a large number of people are in the unorganized sector. So we have no count of whether they dropped off, what is their situation, how are we suffering because of that? There is no idea. But of course, it is tremendously and adversely affected that workforce. 56% of experienced increased anxiety around the job security. They were not sure whether I'll be retained in the job or not. So that is this thing that goes on in the mind of the people who are working in various organizations. 55% found changes in work routines and organization very stressful to them. Almost half of all surveyed felt lonely and isolated when working from home. This again is an adverse effect of work from home, is that. And more than 40% said that their productivity fell and it was very hard to get work done at home. Stress, anxiety, loneliness have increased among the working people, according to a new survey, underscoring the online toll of COVID-19. Besides the COVID pandemic toll, this is what is loneliness, anxiety, stress is also this thing of our working population. And in this, you can see that young people experience sharpest decline in employment. That is between 25 to 54 hours fell from this thing, and sharpest decline in employment was amongst them. Then what needs to be done? What needs to be done is that we need to look at as a priority to retain them in the workforce. Now what needs to be done, we have to see. And short working time and similar schemes should protect employment buffered impact of the COVID-19. That means that like France and few other countries have adopted 4-hour duties and 3-hour duties, or 3 days in a week, the 4 days off and 3 days working, things like that, to make them retain in the workforce is what they're trying to do. Establishing permanent short-time working and similar systems can be activated in crisis situation. The structural adjustment of economies and human resource will be critical. So all this is very well said, but it becomes very, very difficult in our countries like ours, where is diverse geographies, and it is all, each state is going to take a call on how to run this, and it is quite a challenge for our country. The COVID-19 crisis has provided an impetus to most countries to extend income protection groups not previously protected. It has been done. A lot of sectors have been addressed, like farming sector, and other people have got every 6 months or every 3 months, the government pays directly to their bank accounts. That is being done. But to what extent and what is this thing of what other sectors, it is subject to a lot of question. However, the level of support granted to self-employed people often falls short of protection. This is what I was mentioning. Here, the self-employed people, they have no way. Neither they're in the government radar, nor they're in the public protection system is there. They're the most affected, and a lot of industries, like in our country, almost 60 to 75% of industries are all small micro industries. So if their this thing is livelihood has gone, and that is also will seriously affect in the times to come. Next, please. So what are the predictions in terms of work life? So it will always be dominated with the tech-empowered remote work and workplace flexibility will be order of the day. There will be a lot of sectors moving to this mode of working and this kind of workplace flexibility. There is a different, there is no regular, say 9 to 5 work may not exist anymore. This will be as in when you come and you do a bit and go away. Growth in technology will be furthermore enhanced because of the requirement of the situation that we have. There would be more focus on employee well-being. I'll dwell upon it a little later. Training education. Again, we have to train and retrain people in different skills and other things. Value of freelancers. Instead of having people on board as a permanent employee for a particular kind of work, for a particular kind of class, or for a particular kind of specialty, you hire a person for a brief period of time. This is also going to come, and people will be freelancing. Today he'll be working here, tomorrow elsewhere. That is also going to come in a big way. Remote hiring and talent acquisition also will come. Next, please. So as I was telling you, the flexibility will shift from location to time. That is, now people have to go to a workplace to work. That is no more there. It will all come to what time you should be expected to work. That will happen wherever you are, whether in home or some other place will not matter. That will come to in a big way. So there is a need to go to the office every day will change. There may be now, in fact, in Bangalore, there are many offices, many companies where they have 3 days. They come to 3 days and another 3-4 days, they won't be coming. So all this is changing depending on their requirement, depending on their productivity, things like that. This will happen. A lot of barriers, concerns, hesitations were removed from businesses about allowing people to work from home have removed. There is a lot of kind of, I won't say mistrust, there is a lack of trust whether the same employees are going to work so efficiently or fully when they are at home. So it is not so. Now it has been, it's proved that they work as in the offices when they're physically present, as good as they're at their home. So this is disproved. So more and more companies are now coming up with work from home concept. So it is expected that this type of flexibility will remain in future with benefit to employees, with families, and with the work-life balance of workforce. Growth in technology. You can see that within a short period of time, from Zoom to Google Meet to Microsoft Teams and a lot of other platforms have come, which have made it so easy that physical presence may not be required at all. It has grown, and it is going to grow further, and much more newer the apps and these platforms will come to make it with the experience much more richer than what we are having now. Next, please. As I was telling you, most important part of our discussion was the workplace well-being. This was not focused for a long time either in India nor elsewhere. So this is coming to the fore. Now it's very, very important that they look after the employees, and employees will in turn raise the productivity. Now it has been understood very well in the world. So the focus is now on the support to the mental health support is the new normal. And in fact, well-being of the employees is the new normal. A lot of cutting-edge technology companies like Google and Microsoft and things, you can see their offices, everything is provided for them, right? From sleeping to sport to different kind of diets to entertainment, everything is provided, expected that they should work and give the same amount of the return back to the company. That is happening. So this is again, the focus on the employee well-being is come in a big way. And I'm sure we'll also be adopting, all of us, all the companies which want to grow will adopt to this new normal, that is support to the employees' well-being. Pandemic has brought well-being of the forefront, and negative impact on the mental health of them will also affect their work-life balance. So it will also affect the productivity. So again, it's a very important point, and this is gaining a lot of importance here. Like seen many of the companies have come forward to vaccinate their company employees in their premises, vaccinate their employees as well as families. Many organizations have introduced at least one new wellness benefit scheme for their employees during this pandemic. In 2021 and beyond, employers will go even further by working to destigmatize mental health by expanding mental health benefits, like to create awareness across the workforce. This is going to be the most important thing I see as health is concerned. So this is in brief my presentation on workplace, education in the workplace in 2021 and beyond. If anybody has got any clarification, I would be happy to give that.
Thank you very much, sir, for touching on all the domains of online learning as well as work-life balance, with which a lot of us suffer. I think Pro-Chancellor, sir, will agree with me. From the first leadership workshop we had in Ooty, and the second leadership and the third, these are the same areas which most of our participants would seek answers from the experts from. And I think you have covered most of the points related to work-life balance. And it was a very, it was kind of a horse's mouth, a person who is managing both the things together and being practically demonstrated the things. And it was very informative and very exciting to listen to all your components, sir. Now there are a few questions.
Yeah.
There are a few questions, sir, and I would like to just pose them. One question is how to ensure the quality of online courses or online education.
In fact, that was what I was searching. I think it will be a continuous learning on the go, because we have to modify, change it and come to a kind of a situation, because what I saw was that almost 40 to 50% of our presentations were not really up to the mark. It was not appealing to the students. The moment it is not appealing to the students, they go off this thing. They will be switching on all right. They will not be attentive and they will not absorb. So for which lot of inputs are required for the faculty. It is not that today I'm teaching physical teaching and tomorrow I'll become an online teacher. It's not going to happen. For that, a lot of inputs in terms of exactly what needs to emphasize. And I was also mentioning about this small bits of this thing, rather than a continuous discussion over a period of 45 minutes to an hour may not be a suitable thing today. Maybe you have to break into 10 or 15 minute sessions followed by some question answers. Something would make it more interesting probably. So that has to be tried out and seen or on a number of students on a kind of as an observant audience. We should try out and see and come out with more effective means because online classes are being held right from school to universities now. But we have to find out a way, because I'm not an educationist, we have to find out a way to see that how we can make it effective, on which we need to research. Because otherwise we are carrying on with that without understanding or without knowing what is the feedback. Has it been effective? So that is all supposed to be seen. That can be done in our university by having observant, say, a group of students and seeing that what change, if you bring in online, will make it more effective, has to be seen.
Yes. We can conduct a lot of educational research activities on how exactly the improvement in the quality can be observed and compare it with the real-time teaching methodologies so that we can have better understanding related to it. I think Pro-Chancellor sir will also add some components to it, I'm sure. And there is one more question for you, sir. Sir, medical students lose the practice-based learning due to extension of COVID lockdown and continued online teaching. What is your take on this, or how do we compensate for this?
There is a definite the issue is that we are talking about, say, 9 to 4 or something like that. Why restrict to that? Why restrict to that? The activity can go right from 6 o'clock. In medical college, 7 o'clock was the clinics. I'm talking about 42 years. Dr. Basavangadappa is from my college. You can ask him. We go 7:30. You can stagger the timing and have few students, and certainly it can be done. We should do it, in fact, because don't stick to 9 to 12 or 9 to 4. It doesn't work out. We have early morning times, say around after breakfast, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. A lot of learning can be done. Say evening 5 to 8, something can be done. You have to stagger, but the patient experience after the students leave our portals of our college, you can't get it back. It will only be a retrospective. So we have to see that, stagger the timings, there is no problem. And we got a very good skill lab also. Have the same patient with demonstrating symptoms here. It can be replicated in the skill lab, as well as see that don't make a hospital visit so-and-so time to so-and-so time. It doesn't work out. Make it from 6, 7 o'clock till evening 6, 7 o'clock, 12 hours. Have spread out. Then you have batches, less number of students coming, and have the clinics in the hospital, and our experience to this thing can start off with one patient away. It should be done, because once they leave the portals of medical college, it cannot be retrieved. They lose it permanently.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Flexibility is a rule. I think BG sir wants to respond to this question. Sir, over to you, sir.
No, I fully agree that practice-based or physical training of the students in healthcare education is very, very important. Whatever number of online teaching you do, you demonstrate the practical sessions, you give virtual case scenario, it is not going to match with the physical learning by touching the patient, talking to the patient. So what we did in the first wave, let me tell you the real thing we did was, when we called them back, before they could take the exams, even final year students, they were given posting to the hospital, at least for minimum posting, if not the fullest required posting. If not for 2 months, they were posted 1 month in each major postings. In 2.5 months, all the necessary postings were covered. We did stagger their postings. One batch was posted in the morning, and another batch came in the afternoon. No students came to the hospital hitherto till COVID. COVID made us to change our strategy. COVID made us to make postings. In 7 units in medicine, if 28 students are there, they were divided into 4 in each. Okay, so there were 4 students only in each unit, and that's how they were posted. Of course, how they behaved, how they maintained the physical distancing, it is a question of this thing. But a meticulous planning was done. Students were posted. Basic drawback was the variety of non-COVID illness that we need for physical training came down significantly. So again, we had to blend mode of. So one session was a virtual case scenario covering all kind of variety of cases they could have seen if they had postings in reality. And then a variety of cases which were there actually to have a feel of physical touch, talking to the patient, documenting the case sheet, because they have to do that in the exam. So this kind of all adaptability was done, and I'm very thankful to the director, superintendent, and all the HODs in the clinical departments who blended and who responded to our requirement, and they did it. In the second wave, we have no way to call them back and post them to the hospital. The UG students are totally away. Only PGs are working and learning. PGs also, the respective specialty wherever they belong to, now they are made to work in the COVID areas, and so they are missing their the real learning. But I'm only hopeful that the COVID second wave will disappear and they will get all that what they needed, partly through skill lab and partly through the real case scenario. So COVID has affected, and we have done meticulous postings in the first wave, ending before they were given exam, and we staggered their posting, but not like what Diane was telling, like staggered posting of 1 hour each or extended till 7 p.m. That may be a good idea, but physical case of non-COVID quantum will have to pick up only when the wave comes down.
Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, sir, Pro Chancellor, sir, if you want to add.
Yeah, I would like to add on the same thing. I think we have to look from what has happened in the past. Many of the diseases like Kala Azar and all, you don't see now. But you read from the books and textbooks and try to experience and understand if a symptom comes up, how it is going to be beneficial. Like Western world doesn't know about smallpox or anything today, but they have learned and they read and they have the models and methods to learn to do it. Similarly, I feel there will be a transition even in the healthcare scenario in the world in the next 20 years. Many more strong technologies will come in, which will equip the people to not to get infected for certain diseases, or different things will happen. So we would not be able to see the same variety of cases which you are seeing here. I think what is required is a strong documentation of the various cases and diseases that are there, and you have to have your own virtual library where the students can dip in whenever they feel a strange case has come up. How did dengue be addressed? It may not be there 10 years later, but if it does happen, they should know where to find dengue and what type of care was given and why it was done and what is the technology available now to support it. I think this is something we have to prepare for the future, and this will become the way of life for students to learning. There will be no restricted time for learning. It will not be that classroom you have to do this time. You have to go on the go and keep learning with the teacher, with the technology, with the other things which is happening. This is where the whole education is moving. So these are my thoughts here. I thought I should share.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, anything you want to add on quality, improving the quality, very specifically related to online?
See, again, quality is a very relative, what you call as a term. Now, when you talk of quality, what is the benchmark you are looking at? Whether it is the quality of learning you are looking at the quality of PowerPoint which is prepared, you are looking at the quality of the things. All we have to look at is the outcome of the knowledge is what we have to assess, and that is going to be the measure of any learning process. So these technologies, the online education, a person can teach excellently even without a PowerPoint if he has the imagination to teach the student. But some people will have the best of PowerPoint built to them and given them, but they'll still not be able to teach. So I think there is a gap there. The whole idea is that, you have to assess what do you mean by quality. And I feel the quality relates only to how much the student has learned. If he has learned, then you have achieved the goal which you wanted. These are all variables like, oh, you should have a video, so much of percentage of video, so much percentage of PowerPoint, so much page of technology. I mean, this is our own perception of controlling quality, but I don't think they are the real strict measures to follow, but there should be minimum standards.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks, BG sir, for intervening and giving a very pertinent answer related to the online teaching. I would like to again place on records thanks to Dr. Colonel M. Dayanand sir for giving a very lucid presentation on two very important topics. One is online learning and also striking the balance between work and life. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And we would request your continued support in all internal quality assurance cell related activities and your mentorship to progress for the progression of all of us as the leaders. Thank you very much, sir.